Okay, guys, I would like to make a one-piece lidded jar. So I'm starting off with probably about 3 pounds of clay. You can start off with however much clay you want. Doesn't matter. Only affects the size jar that you will be able to make. Compression first. Wrists of my hands, heels of my hands going in, locked into my body, thumb over the top, pressing down. It's getting hot or sticky, add some water. Again, my clay has been drying out. It's been in a hot container for about a week and a half now. Just like you shouldn't leave your clay in your car, you shouldn't leave it in a hot container. So I'm coning it up and down a couple of times. That doesn't mean that I have to lift my hands up. The clay goes up all on its own if you squish it from that 6 o'clock point and that 12 o'clock point. So from here, I'm pulling in, pushing forward, and that'll make the clay go up. And then when I'm bringing it back down, so I can do it this way, and then you guys can really see that angle that it pushes it back at. Or I can do it that way, which is also causing that same angle. You just can't see it because my hands are in the way. Notice how I'm holding my sponge in my hand so that way I can add water as necessary. Okay, ready to make my hole. One-piece lidded jar is one of my favorite things to make. In that I really like making that bottle form. I mean, it does involve making a bottle form, but it also it's just a really easy way to make a lid for a piece. Okay, notice how I volcanoed that in and also lifted kind of at the same time, just because it's a larger piece. So in the process of lifting, I was pushing in with the heel of my hand, but also I'm taking my thumb and kind of pushing, like keeping that locked in and pushing against that heel of my hand just to help stabilize the clay, but in that process it also starts to lift the clay. So the setup for this is a lot like making a bottle. First thing or maybe I should say, it's even more like making a jug. Like bottle will have a really long neck to it. This isn't gonna have a long neck. Go down to the base, let's grab all that clay. As soon as I can, watch when my hands touch together again. I do try to keep the rim on so this part's relatively thin from like here up, but then right up here it's still like kind of a finger thickness. It helps stabilize that rim a little bit more. I don't want this to go out too wide, at least the rim of it, because I am going to need to bring that all back in and close it in on itself. So my wall's been pretty good, so now I'm going to establish the shape that I want. do like a little roundy form down the bottom. Kind of like a ginger jar. Okay, so now I'm getting ready to close this off. So before that gets too small, I want to get in there and get all of the water and gobbledygook out of the inside. I'm not really worried about my hand touching the side of the pot as long as the wheel is moving. If the wheel wasn't moving, then that would be a little bit more problematic. Okay, I'm ready to bring it in now. So I'm doing my little triangle shape. Notice my index finger is also help bringing that clay in. So I'm establishing, so this is where my lid is going to connect right here-ish. So I'm feeling my walls, like those feel nice and even. I'm gonna start to bring this in a little bit more. You do want to be careful when you're working on this to make sure that you always have kind of an upward lift in your, when you're bringing it in. Otherwise you will collapse it. And I also try to leave a little bit, even though I'm gonna get, so like this top part up here, I'm gonna get rid of that. But I'm leaving this lip here, so that way I kind of have something to grasp onto as I'm bringing it in. Okay, I'm feeling my walls. As I bring my walls in, that does make it so that they're, a little bit thicker, so I'm going back and thinning them out. Okay, and so now I'm going to start to bring this in. Okay, now this is a closed form. If I was to just take this, so like there's air that is trapped on the inside, which actually gives this whole piece a little bit more stability. If I were to take this and put it directly into the kiln, it would, I mean, even if I let it dry out for a long time, it would still most likely explode because the moisture and the hot air that is on the inside of this would expand and it would have nowhere to go. Okay, so now I'm going to use my rib. So, I mean, fortunately, we're going to turn this into a lid, so it won't matter, but, you know, don't put this directly into the kiln. So you can see, I can add like quite a bit of pressure over the top of this. And I could reshape the whole thing if I really wanted to, like push in at the bottom, that sort of stuff. Right now I'm feeling pretty good about it, so. Now, the trick is that I can't put my lid here. If I put a ring for my lid here, when I go to cut this off, this part will be smaller than that part. I need to have a spot where this part can sit down directly onto the bottom of it. So I'll show that to you guys in a second. One of the things that can be really nice in setting up your wheel is having a mirror that you can look at so that you're not bending over constantly to try to see the silhouette, but having a mirror that you can see your silhouette of your piece and see how it's going. Make sure everything's doing what you want it to do. So this right here, this is where I'm gonna put my rim. I do wanna make sure that that part is straight up and down. Okay. So now I'm gonna take my needle tool, the not pointy end of it, and I'm gonna hold it at a 90-degree angle, and I'm gonna go in right around here. And I'll push it in until I have this little like rim here. So here's the trick. This part right here and this part here line up with one another. If this part was wider or thinner than this part, then my lid isn't gonna have a good connection. But as is, right here and right here are roughly the same diameter, which is important. Okay, it'll make more sense once I show you guys how to trim this, but right now I'm gonna leave this alone. Now, if there's little like gobbledygook right around here, don't mess with it now. We're gonna mess with it later. Right now, we're just setting it up. Remember, the precision elements of your pieces come in when your piece is leather hard, not when it's wet. When it's wet, you just want to get your shapes like pretty much there, like close to what you need, have things be smooth-ish. I say smooth and then I just told you not to muck around with this part, but this part we're going to go back and make this precision once this piece is leather hard. Now I'm going to take this off of the wheel. Once I take it off of the wheel and put it onto the board, I am going to poke a hole in it. I'm going to do that for you right now so that you can see, but do this after you've transferred it onto whatever other like surface. If you already have it on a bat, then you can do that now. But I'm just going to poke a hole right here and go all the way in and just go in and out a couple of times just to make sure that I didn't clog that hole up again. The reason why I want to do that is as this clay dries, it is also going to shrink down, which is going to build up air pressure on the interior of the piece. If your piece dries too much, that air is going to force itself out somewhere, and generally it's going to put it wherever it feels like it, which is generally not where you want that hole to be. So make sure before you let this sit out to dry that you've poked that hole in there, but preferably, like I like to do it once I've transferred it over to like a bat or whatever its drying spot is. Just because that air does add stability and strength to that piece, but it's not like the end of the world if you do it earlier. But don't forget, okay guys? All right.